Imagine stepping into a modern sports stadium.
Hmm.
You've got your ticket in hand, you're walking through the concourse, and then you see it.
Right, that moment you walk out of the tunnel.
Exactly. You see the 80,000 cheering fans, the perfectly manicured grass, the brilliant floodlights, and obviously the players down on the field.
It's an intensely physical experience, very visceral.
It really is. But, I mean, what you don't see are the hundreds of miles of fiber optic cable that are literally vibrating right beneath your feet.
No, you definitely don't see that.
Right. You don't see the literal hidden city of broadcast trucks parked in the concrete bowels of the arena. Trucks that are pulling enough electricity to power a small neighborhood.
Oh, easily a small neighborhood.
And you certainly don't see the complex acoustic mathematics that are actively working to keep the organic roar of the crowd from, well, completely destroying the multi-million-dollar broadcast.
Which is a massive engineering feat in itself.
Absolutely. So today, we are tearing the stadium down to its studs.
We really are.
Yeah.
Because, the comforting illusion is that a stadium is just a concrete container for a game.
Right. Just a bowl with seats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you look at the architectural and logistical reality of it, it is the absolute definition of an invisible digital city, just hidden in plain sight.
I mean, it is a massive, high-tech broadcast studio that just happens to be masquerading as a sports venue.
Precisely.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. So welcome to this deep dive into the massive and, frankly, completely invisible machinery of media support in sports facilities.
It's a huge topic.
It is. And we are pulling our insights today from some fantastic academic and practical facility management materials. Specifically, we're focusing on Chapter 12, Media Support, by Lawrence W. Judge and J. Patrick Marsh.
Right.
Alongside some incredibly detailed lecture materials that explore these exact same concepts.
And there is a lot to cover.
Oh, there is. Because our mission today is to completely shatter that illusion of the simple stadium. We really want to reveal how these arenas operate as technical broadcast hubs.
Right, and how this hidden infrastructure dictates exactly how you, the listener, experience the game.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the level of control the media has over the physical space of a stadium is almost unbelievable.
It's vital to understand why this matters right up front. I mean, the presence of media isn't some supplementary bonus for a sports facility.
It's not an afterthought.
No, it is the absolute lifeblood. It shapes the entire public perception of the teams and the sports themselves. It is the primary magnet that attracts sponsors and advertising dollars.
Which is where the real money is.
Exactly. And because of that massive financial weight, the operational needs of the media completely dictate facility management.
Completely.
I mean, from the moment the initial architectural blueprints are drawn up for a brand new arena, all the way down to the minute-by-minute logistical operations on game day, catering to the media is the paramount objective.
I want you, the listener, to really think about this practically. Think about the last time you watched a game on your phone while, riding the train home.
Right.
Or the last time you furiously refreshed a fantasy stat tracker during a really crucial third down play.
We've all been there.
Oh, yeah. Or even when you were actually sitting inside a stadium and you found yourself staring up at the massive Jumbotron instead of watching the live humans playing on the field right in front of you.
It happens all the time.
It does, but none of those actions are accidental. They are all the end result of meticulous, exhaustive facility planning that's designed specifically to feed you that information seamlessly.
Precisely. The frictionless convenience you experience as a fan is just it's the tiny visible tip of a massive logistical iceberg.
Right. So how did we get to this point of total digital saturation?
Good question.
Because our audience already knows that 1979 was the watershed historical moment,
Yeah.
right? With the launch of ESPN and the birth of 24-hour sports programming.
The landscape changed forever.
So let's skip the basic history lesson and look at the immediate architectural fallout of that. Because from what I'm reading in these sources, the broadcast Big Bang didn't just change television, it literally broke stadiums.
It absolutely did. I mean, think about the facilities that existed before 1979.
Okay.
Stadiums built in the 1960s and 70s were suddenly rendered completely obsolete overnight.
Wait, literally obsolete?
Yes, because they were built for an episodic media environment. Maybe one or two local cameras for a weekend broadcast.
Right, just a very contained footprint.
Exactly. But suddenly you had a 24-hour network that required constant, relentless coverage.
Wow.
The load-bearing structures of older stadiums literally couldn't handle the physical weight of the new, massive camera platforms required by network television.
The buildings themselves couldn't hold the cameras. That is wild.
They couldn't. And the electrical grids were frying because they just weren't designed to support whole fleets of broadcast trucks plugging into them simultaneously.
So it was an infrastructure crisis masked as a media boom.
That's a great way to put it.
And the sheer volume of what they were trying to capture has only exploded since then. I mean, the sources point out that today there are more than 50 sports television networks in the United States alone.
50. That's incredible.
It is. And the viewership numbers are just astronomical. The 2012 London Olympics drew 219 million viewers.
Wow.
And the 2015 Super Bowl brought in 114 million.
And when you have that much human attention focused on a single physical location, the facility manager has to categorize and manage the media presence with basically military precision.
They really do.
And that categorization is key. The sources provide a very clear, rigid framework for this. They break down media coverage into 3 distinct classifications that a facility must manage simultaneously.
Right, and those are external, internal, and in-house.
Exactly.
Let's break those down because the logistics here are fascinating to me. Let's start with external media. The sources define this as independent media outlets like ESPN, Fox Sports, or the Associated Press that cover an event but have zero affiliation with the organization actually hosting it.
Right. They're outsiders coming in.
Outsiders who usually pay a hefty media rights fee to the host organization just for the privilege of setting up their cameras.
And the crucial underlying mechanism to understand about external media is the dynamic of power.
Power, right.
Because these massive outlets are paying astronomical rights fees, the media company retains almost total unilateral control over what is broadcasted.
So the facility is essentially handing over the keys to their visual and narrative representation.
Exactly. If the home team is playing terribly, or, if there's a fight in the stands, the external media is going to broadcast it, and the facility manager really can't stop them.
Right. It's like a corporate PR strategy. External media is the Wild West of paid journalism.
Right.
You invite them in, you take their millions of dollars, but you cannot strictly control the narrative.
No, you can't.
Then, on the flip side, you have internal media. This is when the sports organization has its own dedicated on-the-payroll media team.
Right. The lecture materials use the University of Texas as a prime example of this.
Oh, yeah. They have an incredibly robust internal media apparatus.
Which gives the organization total uncompromising control.
Because they own the cameras and pay the operators.
Exactly. Unlike the external media, the internal team allows the facility to perfectly align every single piece of media content with their specific brand messaging.
Right.
Their promotional goals, and obviously their sponsor obligations.
So if external is the Wild West, internal is the carefully curated, highly polished company newsletter.
That's a perfect analogy.
But then we get to the third category, which is in-house media.
Right.
The sources describe this as coverage designed exclusively for the patrons who are actually sitting in the venue.
The people in the seats.
Yeah, we're talking about the Jumbotron broadcasts, the specific audio announcements, the hype videos. It's the hype man at the company party. Oh, wait, stop right there. I have to push back on this classification for a second.
Go ahead.
Why do we even classify the Jumbotron as media?
What do you mean?
Well, isn't that just part of the stadium experience, like the PA announcer or the mascot throwing T-shirts? Why does a facility manager view the massive screen hanging over the court through the exact same lens as they view a global broadcast like ESPN?
That is a fantastic question. And it really comes down to the shared hidden infrastructure.
Okay, explain that.
So you look at it and you just see a giant TV for the fans.
Right.
But the facility manager sees it as a competing master for bandwidth, power, and real estate.
Oh.
The in-house production doesn't just magically appear on the Jumbotron. It requires a massive dedicated control room hidden somewhere in the bowels of the stadium.
I hadn't thought about the control room.
Right, and it requires the exact same professional-grade production switchers, the exact same miles of fiber optic cabling, and often the exact same unionized camera operators down on the field as the external media.
Wow.
They are all pulling from the same finite resources of the building.
I really never thought about it like that. They are literally competing for the same physical infrastructure.
They are.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really explains the sheer physical strain this puts on a facility.
It's immense.
A stadium must physically divide its power grids, its camera platforms, and its internet bandwidth to serve these three entities simultaneously.
Yes.
You have Fox Sports demanding the 50-yard line camera angle for the national broadcast. Your internal team needs that exact same angle for a promotional shoot. And your in-house team needs it to hype up the crowd on the Jumbotron.
And here is where the power dynamic of those external rights fees really shows its teeth.
Oh, the money talks.
It screams. The sources explicitly state that sport organizations continually change their rules, modify their schedules, and repackage their content strictly to appease the needs of external television broadcasters.
Which is wild. I mean, the game is no longer just being captured by television. The game is actually being shaped by television.
Yep.
We see this all the time, right? The timing of commercial breaks completely altering the momentum of a basketball game.
Oh, the TV timeouts.
Yes. Or, a college football kickoff time being moved to 9:00 p.m. local time just so it can capture a primetime television audience on the opposite coast.
Right, totally disregarding the local fans who are actually sitting in the stadium freezing.
It is a profound shift in priority. The facility and the sport itself literally bend to the will of the broadcast.
They do. But to execute all of this seamlessly, you run into a massive logistical problem.
What's that?
Well, if you have all these different types of media, external, internal, in-house, all clamoring for the best angles, the safest access, and the most resources,
Right.
you can't just leave the loading dock doors open and let anyone with a camera wander in.
No, obviously not.
You need a highly sophisticated, rigorously enforced gatekeeping system.
And in the world of facility management, that gatekeeping system is called credentialing.
Right, credentialing.
Now, I think a lot of people just assume a press pass is a fun little VIP lanyard you wear around your neck to look important.
Like a backstage pass at a concert.
Exactly. But reading through these materials, credentialing is an incredibly complex security and logistical matrix. It's not just a piece of plastic.
Not at all. Credentialing is the physical manifestation of the facility's control over the media.
Mm-hmm.
It is the crucial process of identifying every single individual involved in an event and meticulously mapping out their specific access, their technological requirements, and their equipment needs.
And the mechanics of this have evolved drastically, haven't they?
Oh, completely. It's no longer just a security guard looking at a laminated card and nodding you through.
Yeah.
We are talking about RFID-chipped lanyards that actively track movement.
Let's dig into those mechanics. How does that actually work in practice for a facility manager?
Well, when a media member applies for a credential, they are assigned a specific operational zone. These zones are usually barcoded or color-coded on the pass, but crucially, they are programmed directly into an RFID chip inside the pass itself.
So the pass talks to the building.
Exactly. The facility is divided into highly regulated areas. You have the press box, press row, field level, media workspaces, and the locker rooms.
Right.
If a field level photographer tries to walk through a turnstile or enter an elevator that is designated only for press box writers, the scanner flashes red, the turnstile physically locks, and security is immediately alerted to an out-of-zone credential.
It literally physically prevents them from moving through the concrete nervous system of the stadium.
Yes, it is absolute control.
I want to ask you, the listener, right now, what stands out to you about how rigidly restricted this access is?
It's a great question to ponder.
Because when I read about this zonal mapping, it hit me that this physical separation of space creates the literal lens through which we view the game. The environment dictates the narrative.
That's a very sharp observation. Because the press box, by its very architectural design, is an elevated, secure, and completely climate-controlled space.
It's very sterile.
It is. It is soundproofed against the crowd. It allows journalists to observe the game analytically without distraction. It's an environment built for a God's eye view of the strategy.
It's essentially an air traffic control tower.
Right.
They're isolated from the turbulence so they can track the data and see the whole board.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you contrast that with the field level or courtside access.
Which is madness.
It is chaotic, it's deafeningly loud, it's physically dangerous.
Yeah.
But it is absolutely essential for capturing the raw emotion, the physical impact of the action, and the actual sweat on the players' faces.
So the photographers and sideline reporters down there are the ones actually feeling the jet wash.
Exactly. And the credentialing process determines who gets to tell the quiet analytical story from the tower and who gets to capture the loud, visceral story from the tarmac.
And then you have the most sensitive zone of all, which is the locker room.
Oh, yes. The sources note that this access is heavily, heavily restricted, usually down to very designated post-game times.
There has to be.
It's a highly choreographed dance. I mean, you can't just have reporters wandering into the locker room while athletes are actively receiving medical treatment.
No, that would be a disaster.
Right. So credentialing ensures that interviews happen smoothly while strictly maintaining the privacy and physical security of the athletes.
And once you have established exactly who is allowed where, you have to actually provide them with the tools to do their jobs.
Which means opening up the loading docks.
Yes,
Yeah.
opening the docks for the heavy machinery. And in the sports media ecosystem, absolutely no one brings more massive, power-hungry gear than television.
Television is the absolute heavyweight champion of infrastructure.
Without a doubt.
When a major network rolls into town, they aren't just bringing some cameras in the trunk of a car. They essentially require the facility to host an entire hidden city right within the venue's footprint.
They do. Let's look at the mechanics of this, starting from the outside. First, they need dedicated space and massive amounts of power for their production trucks and satellite uplink trucks.
And we really need to emphasize the scale here. These aren't just little local news vans with a dish on top.
Right.
These are 53-foot expanding tractor trailers that operate as rolling multi-million-dollar command centers.
53 feet, like
Yeah.
full-size semi-trucks.
Exactly. And they require dedicated, reinforced concrete parking areas right outside the venue, which is often called the broadcast compound.
Okay.
And they require a massive, dedicated, clean power supply directly from the facility.
What do you mean by clean power?
Well, if the stadium's power grid fluctuates even slightly, just a tiny surge or drop it can fry millions of dollars of sensitive broadcasting equipment.
Oh, wow.
Or worse, it can knock a live global broadcast completely off the air.
So the facility literally has to build a highly stabilized microgrid just for the parking lot.
Just for the parking lot.
That is insane, and the complexity only increases once you move inside the venue.
Oh, it gets much harder inside.
Right, because they need strategic camera platforms literally built into the architecture of the building. They require an incredibly complex routing of cabling infrastructure for video, audio, and power to cross the venue safely.
Right, because you can't have cables causing interference.
Yeah.
And you definitely can't have them acting as trip hazards for 80,000 fans walking around holding nachos.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting, and we touched on this briefly before. The connection boxes.
Yes, the connection boxes are brilliant.
I want you to geek out on the mechanics of the connection boxes for a second, because this blew my mind when I read it.
Okay, so historically, television crews would show up to a stadium and they would have to run literal miles of temporary cables from their trucks outside in the compound,
Right.
all the way through the public concourses, up into the catwalks, and down to their specific camera locations.
Manually running cables.
Yes. It took days to set up. It was a massive safety hazard. And from a technical standpoint, the longer a copper cable runs, the more the signal degrades.
So the picture gets worse.
Exactly. It was an engineering nightmare.
Just cable spaghetti everywhere, duct tape to the floors.
Basically, yes. But modern media-friendly venues have solved this by hardwiring the stadium during the actual construction phase.
Okay.
They install permanent, weatherproof connection boxes on the elevated camera platforms and along the field walls.
Right.
And these aren't just simple wall plugs. They are sophisticated fiber optic hubs that are so powerful, they sometimes require their own localized cooling system so they don't overheat.
It's like the stadium is a giant concrete computer motherboard.
Yes.
And the connection boxes on the camera platforms are just the USB ports.
That is a brilliant analogy.
So the camera operator just walks up, mounts their rig, plugs a short 3-foot cable into the permanent box right next to them, and they are instantly live.
Instantly.
And those exterior connection boxes out by the truck compound,
Right.
those serve as the central hub. They pull all the data out of the motherboard and feed it directly into the trucks, which minimizes all of those interior disruptions.
That analogy is spot on. It literally turns a 3-day, incredibly dangerous setup process into a 3-hour, streamlined plug-and-play operation.
That is just phenomenal engineering.
It is. But cameras are just one part of the television piece. We also have to look at the on-air talent support.
Right, the human elements, the
Yeah.
commentators, the analysts, the sideline reporters.
Exactly. They require their own intricate, highly managed microenvironment within the facility.
Right. Up in the broadcast booth, they require a highly technical workspace. They need flawless audio connections for clear commentary.
Obviously.
They need multiple statistics monitors providing real-time game insights, so they sound like geniuses off the top of their heads.
It's all fed to them.
Yeah. They need live game video feeds in the booth so they can see exactly what the audience is seeing at home.
Right, which prevents them from talking about something the viewer can't actually see on their screen.
Exactly. And they need professional-grade lighting setups to ensure they look perfect on camera, regardless of whether it's high noon or pitch black outside.
And increasingly, the broadcast isn't just happening up in a soundproof booth anymore.
No, it's not.
There is a massive demand from external media for fieldside or courtside areas for pregame, postgame, or halftime shows.
Like the desk setups right on the floor.
Exactly. This means the facility must create a secure, fully powered, brightly lit television studio right on the edge of the playing surface.
While the game is happening.
Surrounded by tens of thousands of screaming, completely unpredictable fans.
The acoustic engineering required for that is mind-boggling. I mean, you have analysts trying to have a nuanced, quiet conversation about a zone defense while 80,000 people are screaming directly behind their heads.
Right.
The audio engineers have to use incredibly specific directional lapel and boom microphones to capture the talent's voice while mathematically phasing out the crowd noise behind them. It is a monumental task.
It really is. It makes you appreciate the pristine, seamless broadcast you watch from your couch, doesn't it?
It totally changes how I watch TV.
But, while television brings a literal fleet of trucks and miles of fiber optics, the oldest mass medium in sports takes a much, much leaner approach.
Right. So if television is this massive, power-hungry beast taking up the entire parking lot, how does the oldest form of broadcast radio survive in this modern digital ecosystem?
It's a great question.
Because according to the text, it survives by being the exact opposite of TV. It's essentially an acoustic ghost.
That's a great way to put it. Radio is fascinating because, despite dating all the way back to the very first broadcast boxing match in 1921.
1921, that is over a century ago.
Yes, and yet it remains absolutely vital. It offers live play-by-play and in-depth analysis for fans worldwide, particularly those who are driving, working, or otherwise just unable to watch a screen.
Right.
And compared to television, hosting a radio broadcast is an absolute breeze for a facility manager. The physical footprint is remarkably small.
They basically just need a dedicated, secure space, right? Usually just a small section of an elevated press box with a clear view of the field, or maybe a simple courtside table.
That's it.
And then they just need transmission lines. Now, historically, this was literally just an analog phone line. Like the broadcaster would basically dial a phone number, pick up a handset, and start talking.
Yes, exactly like making a long-distance call.
Yeah.
Though today, it's heavily reliant on digital lines, specifically something known as an ISDN line.
Wait, explain how an ISDN line actually works, because it's not just a regular phone line, right?
No, it's not.
Why is it so crucial for radio?
Okay, so an analog phone line is highly susceptible to static, to latency, and to frequency drop-offs.
Right, it sounds muffled.
Exactly. If you tried to broadcast a roaring stadium crowd over a standard phone line, it would sound like a blown speaker. It would be unlistenable.
Just total distortion.
Right. So what an ISDN line does, and ISDN stands for Integrated Services Digital Network, by the way.
Okay, ISDN.
It takes that standard copper wire and digitizes it. It mathematically splits it into distinct data channels.
Oh, interesting.
It creates a dedicated B channel specifically for the heavy audio payload. That's the pristine, high-quality sound of the broadcaster's voice and the crowd noise.
Right.
And then it creates a completely separate D channel that handles all the routing and connection data.
So it separates the voice from the dial tone, essentially.
Exactly. This separation completely eliminates latency and static. It provides crystal clear digital audio transmission directly to the radio station's master control room, anywhere in the world.
Wow.
And it does all this from a piece of equipment that literally fits in a briefcase.
That is incredible. It's lean, it's efficient, and it's basically bulletproof.
It really is.
And alongside the radio broadcasters, you have the other traditionalists in the building. The print media, the scribes.
Yes, the writers.
Newspapers, magazines, and obviously now digital reporters who are writing long-form analysis. Even in the age of instant video, the sources highlight that print coverage remains a massive driver of the sports narrative.
Oh, absolutely. Through recaps, post-game analysis, in-depth interviews.
Right. And their needs, while definitely less technical heavy than TV, are incredibly specific.
They absolutely are. Print journalists require press boxes or press row seating with a totally unobstructed panoramic view of the game. They have to see everything.
Right.
And they absolutely must have reliable power outlets to keep their laptops charged. Because, as a facility manager, a dead laptop battery means a missed deadline.
And a missed deadline means a very angry editor calling you up.
Exactly.
And they also require a constant intravenous feed of data. I mean, they need official box scores provided at regular intervals throughout the event.
Usually run by runners on paper.
Yeah. They need dedicated stats monitors in the press area so they can follow live granular updates without looking down at their phones.
Right.
And most importantly, they require access to the participants. They have to get into those post-game press conferences to get the first-hand quotes that actually form the backbone of their stories.
And, the lecture materials provided a brilliant case study on how to execute this perfectly.
Oh, the snowboard one?
Yes. The 2012 Snowboard World Cup. It is a masterclass in accommodating print media under extreme duress.
I love this example so much because think about it. You are hosting an event literally on the side of a snowy, freezing mountain.
Yes.
It is the furthest thing from a controlled indoor stadium environment. But the organizers pulled off a logistical miracle.
They really did.
Yeah.
Instead of just putting the reporters in a heated tent at the bottom of the hill, they built dedicated, acoustically sound press conference spaces right on the mountain so they could get clear quotes.
That's amazing.
They constructed elevated temporary press box seating scaffolding so the writers had a prime, wind-blocked vantage point of the entire course.
A temporary press box on a ski slope.
Exactly. And crucially, this is the best part, they routed hardwired internet and power outlets directly to every single seat in that temporary media area on the scaffolding.
Out in the freezing cold. Providing that hardwired infrastructure on the side of a mountain ensured that journalists could focus entirely on writing their coverage.
Yeah.
They didn't have to worry about their Wi-Fi dropping due to a literal blizzard or their laptop batteries dying in the sub-zero cold. It's all about removing every possible point of friction between the journalist and their deadline.
Exactly. Now, alongside the writers in the press box, you also have the visual scribes, the photographers.
Yes.
And managing photographers is entirely about finding a very tense, delicate balance. The sources discuss a Copa America soccer match to highlight this specific challenge.
Right. It's a constant battle for the media coordinators. Because on one hand, you have to position the photographers to get the most dramatic, impactful angles of the action.
They want to be as close as possible.
Of course.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you absolutely must maintain a safe playing area for the athletes. You simply cannot have a photographer with a massive telephoto lens interfering with the soccer players sliding out of bounds at full speed.
Someone could get seriously hurt.
Exactly.
So the facility must physically paint and strictly enforce very specific operational zones. These are often behind padded barriers, and that's where the photographers are allowed to operate.
But because photographers are artists, they always want a unique angle that no one else has.
Always.
So the sources note they now extensively use remote-mounted cameras.
Right.
They'll mount a camera high up in the catwalks looking straight down, or maybe tucked into the padding right behind the goal line, places that are physically dangerous or mathematically impossible for a human to stand.
And they just trigger them remotely with radio transmitters.
It's so cool.
But we also have to talk about the massive technological shift that fundamentally changed the facility management side of photography.
Which shift is that?
The shift from analog film to digital.
Oh, man. This is one of those historical details that just blew my mind when I read it. Paint the picture for the listener of what a stadium darkroom was actually like back in the day.
Okay, so prior to the widespread adoption of digital photography in the early 2000s, stadiums actually had to build and maintain literal darkrooms inside the concrete walls of the facility.
Literal darkroom.
Yes. Imagine the chaos of this. You have plumbers running water lines deep into the bowels of the stadium.
Just for the photos.
Yes. You have the heavy metallic smell of processing chemicals mixing with the smell of stadium hot dogs in the concourse.
That sounds awful.
And you have photographers running full sprint down the concrete tunnels during halftime, carrying physical rolls of negatives so they can develop them, print them, and put them on a wire scanner before the morning paper deadline.
It was a messy, resource-intensive, highly physical process.
It was incredibly demanding on the facility.
And when digital photography took over, all of that just vanished. I mean, the IT departments had to go in, rip out the plumbing, and replace it with CT6 Ethernet cables.
Exactly, because the digital photographers no longer needed dark rooms. They simply shared the main press area with the writers. But while the physical space requirement shrank dramatically, the digital bandwidth requirement absolutely skyrocketed.
It was an incredible trade-off. Photographers now shoot thousands of high-resolution, raw image files per game.
Huge files.
Massive. They require incredibly reliable power and exceptionally high-speed, dedicated internet to upload those massive files to their editors around the world in real time. If the internet goes down, the photos don't go out.
And the facility has failed.
Exactly. Before we move off traditional media, though, we really have to talk about the alphabet soup of professional organizations that the sources mentioned.
Oh, yes, the associations.
Right, because facility managers aren't just dealing with a bunch of random freelance writers who show up. They are dealing with heavily organized, incredibly powerful associations that protect these scribes, negotiate their access, and secure their credentials.
Right.
You have the PBWA for professional basketball writers, the PFWA for pro football, the PHWA for hockey, the NSMA for general sports media.
And perhaps the most historically significant and powerful one of all, the BBWAA, the Baseball Writers Association of America.
Yes, the BBWAA. The facility manager isn't just giving a comfortable seat and free coffee to a reporter, they are hosting the actual historical gatekeepers of the sport.
They really are.
The BBWAA are the people who actually vote for the most valuable player, the Cy Young Award, and they literally hold the keys to the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Which is immense power.
It is. So treating them well and providing them with flawless media support isn't just a professional courtesy, it is a strategic imperative for the franchise. If the writers are miserable because their internet keeps dropping, that frustration often bleeds into how they write about the team.
It's human nature. And it perfectly underscores why media support is a critical function of event management, not an afterthought.
Absolutely.
But, as entrenched and powerful as television, radio, and print organizations are, the sources make it explicitly clear that a massive technological earthquake has completely destabilized and reshaped the landscape of sports media over the last decade.
Yes. We are talking about the digital revolution. The massive, uncontrollable explosion of social media and fantasy sports.
This revolution fundamentally democratized sports coverage.
It really did.
The tipping point highlighted in the academic materials is the 2014 Sochi Olympics.
Okay, the 2014 Olympics.
That event marked a historical milestone. For the first time in history, broadcasters actually purchased more hours of digital streaming coverage than they did traditional over-the-air television coverage.
Wait, really? More digital than traditional TV?
Yes. The demand for online and mobile sports content completely superseded the traditional TV broadcast model.
That is a massive paradigm shift, and we see it everywhere now with applications like Watch ESPN or direct-to-consumer streaming apps making live viewing fully mobile. You don't have to be tethered to a television in your living room anymore. The entire multi-million-dollar stadium broadcast is literally sitting in your pocket, accessible from anywhere on Earth.
It's incredible access.
But beyond just watching the official feed, social media has turned the fans themselves into instant, real-time journalists.
And the data the sources provide on this is absolutely staggering. It really highlights the scale of the challenge for facility managers today.
Let's hear the numbers.
Look at the sheer volume of digital conversation. During the 2014 World Cup semifinal, the famous match between Germany and Brazil.
Oh yeah, the 7-1 blowout.
Exactly. Fans generated 35.6 million tweets during that single match.
35.6 million.
Yes. And the following year, the 2015 Super Bowl generated 28.4 million tweets.
Let me interject with a quick anecdote here because this data really grounds something we've probably all experienced.
Go for it.
Remember going to games even 10 years ago, and the second you walked into the stadium ball, your phone became a useless brick.
Oh, completely useless.
Yeah.
No signal at all.
Right. The cellular networks would instantly crash under the weight of 50,000 people trying to text at the exact same time. The stadium infrastructure was completely buckling under the weight of this new digital reality.
It was a huge problem.
Now, multiply that by 35 million tweets.
It's almost unimaginable. And what's fascinating here is how the traditional media outlets, the external networks, paying millions of dollars, are responding to this massive wave of fan-generated content.
How are they responding?
Well, they aren't trying to fight it,
Eh.
and they aren't trying to shut it down. They are actively co-opting it.
Really?
Yes. The sources point out that major outlets now actively seek out user-generated content, or UGC. They want the spectator footage.
Well, I guess that makes sense, because the fans are everywhere. I mean, if a fan sitting in the third row captures a miraculous shaky smartphone video of a diving catch from an angle the massive TV cameras couldn't reach,
Right.
the official broadcast wants to seamlessly integrate that raw footage right into their polished highlight reel.
Exactly. It is a complete integration of the spectator into the sports media landscape. The fan is no longer just a passive consumer sitting in a seat. They are an active, vital participant.
And part of the broadcast.
They are accelerating the spread of sports news through their live updates, their shared photos, and their live tweeting. They are extending the boundary of the event far beyond the physical concrete walls of the stadium and injecting it directly into the global digital conversation.
And it's not just the social urge to share that's driving this digital hunger. It's the absolute financial juggernaut of fantasy sports.
Oh, fantasy sports changed everything.
I love the historical context the sources provide here because it shows the trajectory so clearly. By 1989, there were already about 1 million Americans playing fantasy football.
Which is deeply impressive for 1989.
It really is, especially considering that in 1989, managing a fantasy league was a logistical nightmare.
Oh, yeah. It was handled largely through physical newspapers, checking box scores the next day, and mailing or calling in your roster changes on a landline.
Right. It was an entirely analog hobby. But jump forward to 2013, and the Fantasy Sports Trade Association estimated that 33 million people were playing.
53 million.
And they were spending an unbelievable $15 billion annually on their fantasy teams.
That is massive.
Mm-hmm.
And this raises a really important question for facility management. How does that massive financial and emotional investment actually change the way media is consumed and, by extension, how the facility operates?
Well, if you think about it, I think it entirely changes how fans consume the media.
How so?
Think about it. Before fantasy sports, you watched the game to see if your local team won or lost. You cared about the macro narrative, the final score.
Right, the team outcome.
But now,
Right.
because of fantasy leagues, fans demand hyper-detailed coverage, granular statistics, and instantaneous video highlights of individual players across the entire league.
That's true.
You might be a diehard fan of a team playing in New York, but if your fantasy running back is playing in a game in Seattle, you need real-time data, injury updates, and video from that Seattle stadium immediately.
Exactly. Fans are tuning in not just for the narrative of the game in front of them, but to track the minute-by-minute performance of their specific, decentralized roster of players.
Right.
This forces both the media companies and the facility itself to provide exponentially more data much faster and to a much wider audience than ever before in human history.
Which brings us to the most complex engineering challenge we've discussed today.
Okay, lay it out.
If you have 33 million people playing fantasy sports demanding real-time stats, and you have 35 million people live tweeting and uploading videos from the stands, the stadium's invisible digital plumbing has to be absolutely flawless.
It has to be perfect.
We have to talk about the invisible infrastructure, the internet, the LEDs, and the acoustic mathematics.
Let's start with the internet. Managing internet and cellular service access is no longer a luxury or an afterthought. It is a top-tier priority for facility managers today.
It's non-negotiable.
It is considered as critical to the operation of the building as keeping the floodlights on or keeping the plumbing working. And the facility must essentially build and run parallel, highly robust digital networks to serve two very different, very demanding populations.
Okay, 2 networks. Who are they for?
First, you have the media professionals. They require incredibly stable, high-speed wired Ethernet connections. These are often hardwired directly into the press boxes and photo bays.
Right, to ensure they can upload their massive files and stories without a microsecond of interruption.
Exactly, because you simply cannot have a photographer's upload of the game-winning touchdown fail just because 1,000 fans in the section below them decided to post a selfie to Instagram at the exact same moment.
The systems cannot share the same pipe.
Exactly, which is why the fans require their own massive, high-capacity distributed Wi-Fi networks.
Right.
The facility must build a wireless network capable of allowing tens of thousands of people in a highly condensed physical space to stream video, upload photos, and check their fantasy stats simultaneously without crashing the entire system.
Which is basically a miracle.
It is. It requires hiding hundreds of Wi-Fi access points under seats, inside handrails, and in the concourse ceilings.
Under the seats. It is a phenomenal engineering feat that literally no one notices until it stops working.
That's the life of a facility manager.
And to keep this data-hungry, smartphone-addicted audience engaged when they actually look up from their screens, facilities have to integrate massive LED displays.
Right. The screens.
The sources break these down into three main categories of visual real estate. First, you have the giant video boards.
The jumbotrons.
Right, the massive high-definition screens usually hanging over the center of the arena or at the ends of the stadium, showing live footage and replays.
Right.
Then you have the fascia, or ribbon displays.
Those are the ones that wrap around the stadium, right?
Exactly. They're the long, skinny LED boards running continuously around the perimeter of the seating tiers. They're perfect for running continuous messaging, out-of-town scores, fantasy stats, and obviously sponsor info.
Very lucrative real estate.
Very. And finally, you have the courtside or field side displays, those smaller digital boards right down on the edge of the action.
And the integration of all these disparate displays is key. The sources point to the specific example of NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas.
Oh, their setup is incredible.
Their main video board is a marvel of technical integration. It doesn't just show a raw camera feed of the game.
No.
It seamlessly blends live, high-definition game footage, precise timing and scoring data from the officials, live statistics, and highly lucrative dynamic advertising into a single, massive, orchestrated visual experience.
It's like a command center on a screen.
It keeps the fans constantly informed with the data they crave, while constantly engaging them with the sponsors paying the bills.
It's sensory overload, but it's a highly orchestrated, incredibly profitable sensory overload.
It is.
And speaking of sensory orchestration, I want to talk about something I had never really considered before reading these materials.
What's that?
The idea that the organic roar of the crowd is actually something acoustic engineers have to mathematically plan for.
Oh, yes. Audio control is absolutely critical, and it is incredibly complex physics. Yes. A facility manager has to balance competing sonic needs within a giant echoing cavern.
Right.
You have the broadcaster's commentary up in the booth, the manufactured game sounds and heavy bass music pumping through the stadium's PA system, and the organic, chaotic noise of 80,000 screaming fans.
All bouncing around at once.
Exactly. If the PA system is too loud, it ruins the fan experience, damages hearing, and bleeds horribly into the broadcast booths, completely ruining the audio for the millions watching at home.
But if it's too soft?
If it's too soft, the stadium feels dead and lacks energy.
The sources note that there are massive acoustic design differences depending on the building's architecture, too.
Definitely.
Indoor facilities have a contained environment. The sound bounces off the roof and the concrete walls, so you have to strictly control reverberation using acoustic dampening panels.
Right.
But outdoor facilities have to account for wind, weather, and the fact that sound just escapes up into the open air.
And solving this involves intense mathematical planning based on the speed of sound.
Wait, the speed of sound?
Yes, because sound travels much slower than light.
Yeah.
If you have one massive speaker cluster in the center of the stadium, a fan sitting 300 feet away will hear the announcer a fraction of a second after they see the announcer's lips move on the giant screen.
Oh, wow.
It creates a disorienting echo effect.
That makes total sense. So how do they fix that?
Engineers use something called digital signal processors, or DSPs.
Okay.
They place hundreds of smaller speakers throughout the stadium closer to the fans, and the DSP mathematically delays the sound coming out of the speakers closest to the fans by milliseconds.
It delays the sound.
Yes, so that the sound hits their ears at the exact same moment as the sound traveling from the main cluster in the center.
So they are artificially manipulating time and sound waves to avoid sound dead spots where people can't hear anything, and to avoid those nasty echoing delays that make referee announcements unintelligible.
Exactly. The goal is to ensure that the excitement of the crowd is amplified for the players, while the broadcasters up in the press box can still hear themselves think.
It's just brilliant engineering.
It truly is an invisible art.
Okay, we have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let's pull this all together.
The core takeaway from all these sources, from the textbooks to the historical lectures, is a fundamental redefinition of what a sports venue actually is.
Right.
Sports facilities are no longer just physical places with seats surrounding a grassy field. They are high-capacity, highly sophisticated digital broadcasting hubs. Facility managers aren't just opening the doors and turning on the lights. They're essentially running a small, high-tech city.
A city that has to handle everything.
Yes. They must simultaneously cater to the massive spatial and power needs of multi-million-dollar TV production trucks, the specific hardwired requirements and tight deadlines of traditional print journalists, and the insatiable digital bandwidth demands of tens of thousands of fan journalists armed with smartphones.
So, what does this all mean? It means the next time you are sitting in a stadium, or even just watching a game on your tablet on the subway, take a second to look past the players on the field.
Right, look at the infrastructure.
Look at the ribbon boards flashing out-of-town stats. Notice the pristine, perfectly mixed audio of the commentator cutting cleanly through the roar of the crowd.
Think about the connection boxes.
Yes. Think about the fiber optic connection boxes and the miles of invisible cabling running under your feet that are actively making it all possible. Appreciate the sheer, invisible stagecraft of it all.
And I will leave you with a final thought, building on what we've discussed today.
Let's hear it.
We learned that major sports organizations continually adapt their rules, their schedules, and even the physical dimensions of their stadiums to meet the specific needs of external television broadcasters.
Right. Television completely reshaped the game.
But today, we are seeing the massive rise of user-generated content and social media live tweeting, where the primary screen for consuming sports is a vertical smartphone in the palm of your hand.
Oh.
So, if the sport historically changed its rules for the horizontal television camera, will we soon see sports literally change the rules of the game, or the dimensions of the field, to cater specifically to the short attention span, vertical video formatting of the fan broadcaster's smartphone?
That is a wild thought to end on. Changing the literal dimensions of the game for vertical video.
It is a fascinating, disruptive horizon for facility management to prepare for.
It really is. Well, thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking closely at the world around you and keep questioning the invisible systems making it all work. Because as we learned today, the concrete bowl is never just a concrete bowl.
Until next time, take care.